When you're crocheting, it's very important to understand the anatomy of the stitch and where to insert your hook into it when you're beginning a stitch. I'm just going to do a little turning chain here and work this row in single crochet. Typically, unless your pattern states otherwise, you will insert your hook under both legs, both of these little legs here that create these V's along the top of your work. That is a regular stitch, but sometimes your pattern will call for TFL, or through the front loop. And that means you're only going up the first little leg of that stitch. Rather than going under both of them like this, you're only going up the front. That again looks like this, only going up the front of that stitch, the first leg of the V. This creates a looser fabric because it's only working up one side of it, but it also can create a nice ribbing effect. If you were to work your entire row back and forth only into the front loops, then you will get a nice ribbing effect on the fabric. So even though it's still single crochet, the fabric that you're left with will end up looking slightly different. So it is a nice way to get a different effect by not having to learn any new stitches. I'm just going to finish this row to show you what it looks like with the little bit of ribbing that occurs. So as you can see, because we didn't go into the back part of that loop, you get this little raised line here of the back of that stitch. So it's creating this little ribbing. If I were to continue only working into the front loops up my fabric, I would have these little lines, these little bars running across the fabric. And you don't get that when you're working regular single crochet. These are nice and flat, but this one has that raised ridge there. You can also work into the back loop only, which is essentially the same thing. You're just going into the back loop only of the stitch. Rather than going into the front or under both, you're just going into the back of that loop. Oop. I find it a lot easier to work into the back loop only than I do into the front loop only. There's just something more comfortable about it. So if you're wanting to create this ribbing, I would suggest working into the back of the loops. And this will also create the same kind of ribbing just on the opposite side of the fabric.